Hey everyone, Amia here from Resonance Astrology and welcome to my channel. Today we're going to take a look at Mars's ingress into the sign of Sagittarius and we're going to focus on what this means on an archetypal level. We're going to look at the transit timeline so you know what transits are the most important, what dates are the most important ones to look out for. And then we're going to apply all of this into the horoscopes. So these are not your average Mars or any sort of planetary ingress horoscopes. We're not going to just focus on the house that Mars moves into for your sign. We're also going to take all the transits. So, for example, the first one that we're getting is Mars in Sagittarius opposing Uranus in Gemini. So, I'm not only going to tell you what Mars moving into your first or second house means, I'm also going to tell you what Mars opposing Uranus means for you. So these are in-depth horoscopes. And again, as I already said previously, this is like three parts, okay? We're going to look at the archetype first, then we are going to take a look at the general transit timeline, and then we're going to go sign by sign throughout all of the horoscopes. The timestamps are going to be linked down into the description and down in the comment section so you can skip ahead where you see fit. I do urge you, though, to stay for the first part because this is building up for everything that I'm going to say afterwards. I know some of you really like horoscopes, and I fully get that. I fully get that. But I do think if you want to have a real deep understanding, it is also important to understand what Mars in Sagittarius on an archetypal level means in a more general sense, in a more broad sense, but still, it's gonna be easier to understand the horoscopes then, at least in my opinion. Yes, and so I'm gonna pull up a presentation now, and we're gonna see each other soon. So you are also gonna have visuals and be able to see everything. And feel free to screenshot along the way as well, okay? And if you have any sort of questions, feel free to put them down in the comments. Also, absolutely feel free to send me a DM on Instagram or even send me a mail if you want to know anything on a deeper level. So, without further ado, I'm going to open the presentation. We're going to see each other soon. So, hello everyone. Once again, this is the title image that I chose for Mars in Sagittarius. I definitely feel there is spiritual fire. I think this is such an important keyword and key point because Jupiter is the ruler of Sagittarius, and Jupiter is currently in the sign of Cancer in an exalted position. So, this is already a very philosophical sign in and of itself. And now, paired with that combination, I do think there is a lot of vigor and a lot of inner solace that we're going to find and just like that we want to push for. Okay. So, without further ado, let's look at the general archetype of Mars in the sign of Sagittarius. As already mentioned before, this is a Jupiter-ruled Mars. Jupiter and Mars are, first of all, in the Chaldean order, they are actually right next to each other. So after the Sun, there is Mars, and then there is Jupiter. Nevertheless, they still have wildly different ranges in how fast they are. I mean, getting a Mars return is approximately around 2 years every time, and getting a Jupiter return takes about 12 years. So they have different lengths, and obviously Jupiter is a much larger planet than Mars. And so there is a lot of spiritual drive and motivation that gets pushed into the sign of Mars when it is in a Jupiter ruled sign. We are doing things out of an urge for it to make a sense in the grander scheme of things, okay? We are getting our internal drive through connecting and devoting ourselves to something higher than us. In I think actually in a lot of ways, Mars and Jupiter ruled signs, there can be a bit of a martyrdom here as well, to be completely honest, although this is a bit of more of a shadow side. But there is like I want to die for a higher cause. I want to devote myself for a higher cause. But it can go so far as to literally being like, I'm gonna sign up for the army or anything like that and devote myself to give my life to something higher and greater that I see fit. And so this really is that drive for Mars. I think it's also very very Viktor Frankl-esque, because he describes in his book that he was one of the guys that survived. Like he was a Jew in the Nazi times, and then he became a very important figure in the psychology realm. He was a psychology practitioner, I think even a psychiatrist, if I'm not mistaken. And he said that one of the main things he observed and saw of why, like how some people digested that trauma that happened during that time was if they had a devotion and a belief to something higher. Mars in Sagittarius is very much the you can take everything away from me. You can cut my limbs. You can put me in the cell, but you cannot take my belief away from me and the connection that I have to God, to cosmos, to something higher. That is Mars in Sagittarius at its best. And Sagittarius as a sign also comes at the end of autumn. And I know that we associate winter with like a dark and grim time, but essentially, what is happening from a natural perspective in the natural world, at least here in the Northern Hemisphere, is that when there is the winter solstice, the days actually slowly start getting longer again. And Mars, being that last sign before that winter solstice, really carries that hope, that flame at the end of the dark part of the year. And here I really think "hope dies last" is such a fitting quote. It's the light at the end of the tunnel. And it's oftentimes, if you've ever experienced a difficult situation in your life, hope and faith can carry us beyond where our physical bodies could ever carry us. And this is really the strength of Mars in Sagittarius. And there is also power through intellectual stimulation. Okay, that is a Mars that likes to intellectually stimulate itself. It likes to have conversations. It gets its drive from having conversations, and in a way, I would say almost sapiosexual in that way, whereas like, ooh, I'm stimulated by your deep thoughts and deep thinking and how you see the world. There is a lot of philosophical depth to that sign in Mars and Sagittarius. And the drive is always going to be for a search of meaning and purpose in life. Okay, if you have natal Mars in Sagittarius, let me know down in the comments below if this really resonates with you, with how, sorry, you approach life. This is kind of how what I have from an archetypal level. And then let's talk about the transit timeline. So Mars moves into the sign of Sagittarius on November 4th and will stay in there in the sign until December 14th. One of the biggest and most important transits, is happening pretty much right on the beginning, is Mars immediately opposing Uranus in Gemini. This is also happening on November 1st, right in its ingress, because Uranus that same week is gonna retrograde back into the sign of Taurus. So this is really just at the edge, just zero degrees pretty much. So this is potent. This is very potent. I also put here as a note that Jupiter moves retrograde on November 11th. I put this here extra in that way because I'm not going to focus on that when I do the horoscopes. This is just an added extra because this is a Jupiter ruled Mars. So whatever Jupiter does obviously is going to impact that planet. I mean, Jupiter is also going to impact all the planets in Pisces, okay? It's also going to impact Saturn and Neptune in Pisces. But when Jupiter moves retrograde on November 11th, just a few days after the ingress, there is probably going to be a more internal focused drive. Okay, retrogrades are more introverted, more internal. And so it almost feels like we're gonna be more introspective and perhaps want to meditate more and explore these worlds, which are also very Mars and Sagittarius, the inner worlds, which lead us to reach higher realms as well. And then a few days after that, we have Mars Mercury conjunction. While Mercury is in its retrograde motion, this is the second of three Mars Mercury conjunctions. Perhaps you heard me in the weekly overview talk about this already when we had the Mars Mercury conjunction in the sign of Scorpio. We're going to get the last one, by the way, in when Mars and Mercury are in Capricorn. So it's three different signs. I do think this one is the most difficult one out of all of those three just because Mars doesn't have any specific dignity in the sign of Sagittarius, and Jupiter will have just stationed retrograde as well, that is ruling that Mars at that time, and because Mercury in Sagittarius is in a debilitated position. Mercury in Sagittarius is in its detriment and is also retrograde. So I do think this will be a bit difficult and definitely focus on to like reassess our like the impulses and the insights that we have and like do we want to immediately speak or not? You know, Mercury in Sagittarius in and of itself can be quite blunt. It is a stereotype that I have found to be true and true over and over again. And so this date, I will say it will be important to not have any reactive speech because you might get into unnecessarily trouble and unnecessary misunderstandings that you could probably avoid if you just listen and go inside first and talk less, not more. Then on November 24th, we're going to have Mars at the bending of the nodes. The bending of the nodes is when, let me explain it this way. The nodes of the moon, which is the south node and the north node, they're always in direct opposition to one another. And so when we have a planet, in this case, since the nodes are in Pisces and Virgo, so if any planet is in Gemini or in Sagittarius, they might have a chance to land at the bending of the nodes, which is when they are exactly in a square to both of them at the same degrees. This is at the bending of the nodes. And this is usually a very karmic time, so to say, when a planet is exactly in between those, because there is going to be some karmic course correction. And there's going to be destiny that is shaped by your actions because Mars is involved in this instance. So we're gonna talk later what that means exactly for your zodiac sign and in which areas of your life you're gonna be faced with decisive action. Uh, and then by the end of this transit, we're going to have Mars squaring Saturn and also squaring Neptune in the sign of Pisces. This is going to happen throughout December 9th till December 14th. And, you know, Mars, Saturn, there's definitely some friction when it comes to vision and maybe bringing in more discipline and seeing the limits or just being faced with limits. It is it is a bit of a frustrating aspect sometimes, but inadvertently there is a chance to gain more structure into the effort that we want to put in where we want to go in life. And then Mars squaring Neptune, there is a chance of having some confusion of where exactly we want to direct our will. And this is where if you didn't take the energy from the Mars square Saturn, you're going to be confused, you know, because you're going to be like, you're going to try acting, but without any clarity, and that's going to drain your energy. And that's not where we want to go. So, hopefully, this transit at its best purifies your motives before you're able to pursue. And pursue we will once Mars moves into the sign of Capricorn, because this is the realm where Mars is exalted. Mars does extremely well in the sign of Capricorn. And we're going to talk about that in December when the time is due. I really like making these Mars horoscopes. So, yes, I also like making the other transits. I found that a lot of astrologers usually focus on the bigger transits, and I do too, and I do too. But there is something about Mars. Maybe it's because I'm ruled by Mars, but I really want to focus on bringing you the Mars horoscope. So this is going to be unique to this specific channel. And, if you like this, if you want to hear more about Mars horoscopes, then stay tuned, subscribe to the channel, and like this video to show me that you are in support of this series. Great. So now we're going to talk about each of the zodiac signs. Yay. We're going to start off with Aries Sun and Aries risings. Welcome to your Mars and Sagittarius horoscopes, dear Aries. So Mars in Sagittarius is going to be in your ninth house, which is going to fuel your quest for truth and for direction and where you want to head in life. The first transit that we're going to get is Mars opposing Uranus. This is going to happen on November 4th, and it's going to really jolt your beliefs, okay? There might be some unexpected insights or disruptions when it comes to your faith, which will then lead to you gaining better direction in where you actually want to head. We need that disruption when it comes to your beliefs. And this is going to be further emphasized, excuse me, when Mars meets Mercury and they're both form a conjunction on around November 13th, where, and this is what you see here, right? And this is Mars and Mercury, where you got to be careful that the words you speak, they could become arrows, metaphorically and literally speaking, with the sign of Sagittarius, where you're going to be asked to speak with conviction, but also stay humble in what you don't yet know. Because Mercury is in a debilitated position in the sign of Sagittarius, and it's going to be in retrograde motion this time around. So don't get too ahead of yourself, dear Aries. Okay. I know that sometimes you know what's best, but it is important to stay humble during that time because sometimes there are people that can actually teach us things, and sometimes we got to listen to them and, yeah, take their advice. You don't have to follow it, but we can see what they have to say. And then around November 24th, we're going to have Mars at the bending of the nodes. These are these two small little symbols right here. You're going to have that, across your 12th and 6th house axis. And so there is decisive action that needs to be taken when it comes to the choices of your beliefs and your worldviews and how this can really reshape your path entirely. Okay. When the nodes are played, there is a lot of karmic stuff going on, a lot of stuff that we like to associate with destiny. And our thoughts and beliefs are form the road to our destiny because the way we choose to interact and believe this world exists and is structured is going to lead us either into a very abundant direction or not. And this is the time where you're going to be faced with a decision in how you choose to believe in the world around you. And then during the end of the transit, we're gonna get Mars squaring Saturn and Neptune. This is gonna be around December 9th till 14th. And this is going to ask you to kind of ground the vision that you probably just had when Mars was doing its whole transit, and also really embody that lived experience and not go into the realm of dogma or anything like that. Just really be concise, okay? Because there's a lot of 12th house activation going on with you, and ninth house, of course, as well. And both your ninth and your 12th house are ruled by Jupiter. And so this means that a lot of times your subconscious belief and sometimes also unhealthy subconscious beliefs, which are 12th house or your own patterns, you don't realize how much they're impacting the way that you are in this world. And this is really going to be a time where you might face this one last time, okay? Because you had Saturn and Neptune move through your 12th house for a while now. So it's not like the new terrain. This is just looking back one last time and really realizing how important it is to face these demons that lurk behind the shadows and realize that's what they are. Sometimes they are just small little demons that want to self sabotage our life, and we can choose to have different beliefs around that. So, this is what I have for you, dear Aries. Let me know how you are doing, and I'm wishing you a lovely Mars and Sagittarius transit. Bye. Okay, Taurus suns and Taurus risings. Mars will be transiting your eighth house. And this is the house of shared resources, of intimacy, of also fears and anxieties and other people's resources. The eighth house has a lot to do with what other people bring into our life, what other people owe us. And the first major transit that is going to happen around November 4th is going to be the Uranus opposition, Mars Uranus opposition. And this is definitely going to shake up your feeling of security, which I think, dear Tauruses, you don't like so much. um, and it's going to make you realize that freedom requires a vulnerability, that you don't have to come up for everything on your own or have to rely on your own. That it is okay to also let other people bring things into your life, and that it requires for you to realize, where can I not provide for myself? I know you love to provide for yourself and you're pretty good at it, but sometimes it is nice to also accept that. So there is going to be a shakeup immediately. And then around November 13th, we're going to have a Mars Mercury conjunction, which is probably going to expose some hidden truths or maybe lies you have been telling yourself exactly around these topics about maybe how much you do not need other people. But clarity comes through honest dialogue. This is happening both in your eighth house. Okay, we have Mars and Mercury here. And Mercury is going to be in retrograde at that time. And Mercury in Sagittarius is in a debilitated position, is in detriment. And so it is more of a time to explore internally on a more reflective note. And I do think this is a good time. Even though this is like the second part of that chapter, we already had that initial Mars Mercury conjunction in the sign of Scorpio, and we're going to get that last one in the sign of Sagittarius. But I do think this is still a good time to have that one on one, heart to heart talk with someone you genuinely trust. Then around November 24th, we're going to have Mars at the bending of the nodes. These are these two little guys right here. And this is happening across your 11th and 5th house, and of course, also involving the 8th house. So there is a lot of karmic ties and energetic entanglements that are seeking release when it comes to how much pleasure you are experiencing in your friend groups and the communities and the people you have probably devoted yourself to. And maybe you're seeing there is a power imbalance, and there is going to be a decisive action that you're going to need to take at that time to release these entanglements that are unhealthy, not the ones that are healthy. And then around the end of this transit throughout December 9th till 14th, we're going to have we're going to have Mars squaring Saturn and Neptune in your 11th house. Again, this is going to remind you that true power is in surrender and not in control. Sometimes when the 11th and the 8th house get activated, I like to think that you can really see who your true friends are, because the 11th house has to do with like our friend groups and the 8th house has to do, yeah, with our intimacy and how. And I feel like sometimes when there is conflict that is brought up and you are in a tough time, and you can like really see who are your friends, that like, are they really here during the tough times in your life? So I feel like this is kind of going to be that moment where you can see who really is on your side and who isn't. And yeah, also lead you to make that decisive action in, where am I going to cut my ties if it is necessary? So, this is what I have for you, dear Tauruses. Let me know how you're doing and how you're feeling, and I'm going to see you soon. I wish you a lovely Mars and Sagittarius transit. Okay, okay, Gemini suns and Gemini risings. Mars will be activating your seventh house of your partnerships and close one-to-one relationships. It's really the more intimate relationships we have in your life, which certainly are partnerships, but it can as well also be deep friendships, just like the people that know you better. It's not like the 11th house where it's about your friend groups and your acquaintances. It's really about who knows you better. Sometimes even your therapist can fall under the seventh house because they know you on a more intimate level than the other people in your life do. And I also like to think the seventh house as the house of mirrors because it mirrors the things to us. Yeah. And it's also your angular house, okay? So this means a lot, I mean, all of your angles are kind of getting activated this transit around, which means this transit is going to be pretty significant and important for you. The first one that we are getting is the Uranus opposition. This is happening around November 4th between your first and seventh house. So it does bring immediate, sudden revelations through other people. And I would like to give you the reminder here that sometimes what you resist actually teaches you, can actually teach you things. And then around November 13th, 14th, we're going to have Mars Mercury conjunction in the sign of Sagittarius, once again in your seventh house, in your opposite sign. But this is also personal because Mercury is your ascendant ruler. And this demands honesty, but yet conscious speech. Okay, don't get too ahead of yourself. And if somebody else is revealing information to you, because sometimes seventh house transits can talk about other people and what they are going through or bringing into our life. Stay curious. What you do best. Like just listen to what they have to say and what they have to reveal and make up your mind later. Okay, don't do it immediately on the spot because again, this is happening during Mercury's retrograde period. So there's going to be a lot of changes that are happening regardless. And then around November 24th, we're gonna have Mars. Mars at the bending of the nodes. Saturn is gonna come later. We're gonna have Mars at the bending of the nodes. These are these two little guys right here. And this is definitely going to relate to becoming like a fated turning point when it comes to your home life, your career, and making any decisions based around like, because Mars is here in your seventh house. So it's like, what are the close people that you want to have in your life that are supportive of your goals and dreams and like your vacation and what you really want to do and set out to do in your 10th house, the work that you want to have, and also your home life. Because you want to have a good home life. You want to be able to come back home after a rough day at work or wherever and have people waiting at you that are genuinely appreciative and sustainable long term. And so this is going to be a decisive point in how you relate uh, for the future and who you have on your side. Then come December 9th till 14th, we're going to have Mars squaring Saturn and Neptune in the sign of Pisces. This is going to test some boundaries in relationships. Again, if they are conducive and helpful to where you want to build your life, where you want to head in that 10th house. Okay, I know that dreams and goals are 11th house territory as well, but it is very much, this is like the acquaintances that we need. The 11th house is the luck that we need. The 10th house is the actual goal that we want to reach and the dream and the vocation that we want to do. Okay, the 10th house is not just work and your job. Job is much more sixth house. The 10th house is really the vocation you want to have and how you want to be remembered for the work that you're doing in the world. And yeah, maybe there is going to be some losses at that time, and you're going to be have to be very compassionate and see, hey, I cannot, these people are not conducive to whatever I'm trying to achieve here. And maybe I need to let go one last time. Okay, let's not forget that Saturn and Neptune are in Pisces one last time. And after next year, they're going to move into Aries in your 11th house. And this is a whole different story. But this is what I have for you, dear Geminis. Let me know how you're doing. And I wish you a lovely Mars and Sagittarius transit. So, dear Cancer Sun and dear Cancer Risings, welcome to your Mars and Sagittarius horoscope. Mars will be traveling and activating your sixth house. And that is definitely going to energize your routines, your work, your body, how you take care of yourself. Uh, the immediate transit that we're getting first thing is Mars opposing Uranus in your 12th house. This is happening around November 4th. This is gonna first initially really disrupt your plans. And flexibility will become your ally at that time. Because sometimes we have these goals on how we want to take care of ourselves, but then we have Uranus activating the 12th house, which is like, but no, maybe you wake up and there's a mental health crisis going on. Or maybe you start working out, you have all these realizations of, but wait, this is how I was self-sabotaging or doing things. And then all of a sudden, you're like, I cannot focus on my health anymore because I need to dedicate myself to what is coming up here. So, this is something that might easily disrupt your, well, probably sense of maybe felt safety and in how you can approach taking care of your health and your routines and all of that and how you show up at work at your job. So just be aware of that. I could also see that, because this is your sixth house, which talks about like your job and the work you do. And it could also be that, the 12th house is the house of hidden enemies. Potentially. And this is only going to ring true for some cancer suns and risings. There could be a coworker in your field that turns out to reveal themselves as a hidden enemy and somebody that is secretly sabotaging yourself at work. So do just be wary of that initially. Around November 13th, we're going to have Mars Mercury conjunction all happening in your sixth house. And this can potentially lead to overthinking, and you're going to need to really ground your ideas through practical action. Because Mercury is going to be retrograde at that time, and it is debilitated in the sign of Sagittarius. So it's not the best Mercury, especially when it's one debilitated and then also retrograde. So it can easily lead to you overthinking. Maybe there is a revelation that happens around your job, and then all of a sudden you're overthinking, did I do something wrong? Is this the reason why this is happening in my life? Is this the reason why this person is treating me the way that they are treating? And I urge you during that time to focus on grounding yourself in your body and focusing on working out, lifting that weights, or maybe also just reading intellectually stimulating books or something like that. That's very Mars and Sagittarius. Playing a chess party, anything like that. It doesn't always have to be physical, certainly can be with Mars, but Mars and Sagittarius can also be very philosophical. Yes. Then around November 24th, we're gonna have Mars at the bending of the nodes. These are these two guys right here. And this is gonna be a decisive point where you're like, I want my work to become spiritual service. And I want to be devoted before I am dutiful. And this is going to lead to some decisive action in how you are approaching your work life and how you are approaching your routines and how you are also approaching your health. Because when the third and ninth house get activated, this has a lot to do with our thoughts and how we're thinking and how our worldviews shape our worlds and how our nearby environment also influences us. And so this is really gonna put you on the spot in how you are approaching all these sixth house topics, which again have to do with your routine, have to do with your work, job, and also have to do with the health of your body. Then around December 9th till 14th, we're going to have Mars squaring Saturn and Neptune. This is happening here in your ninth house and sixth house. And here the question is, where does sacrifice end and self-neglect begin? Because sometimes we can take things too far. And when the sixth and ninth house are activated, there's a lot of spiritual devotion and practice we want to do. It is probably a very ideal time to have a routine that is almost like a ritual that involves a prayer, that involves maybe chanting mantras or something like that. Just something that can kind of ground you and make a thread between that spiritual world, which is very ninth housey, and that real world, which is very sixth housey. But all of this can help you, okay? All of the ninth house topics can really help you out in how you approach sixth house topics, which, a lot of them have to do with like frustration and delay. Sometimes when Mars is in the sixth house, we get burns, cuts, things like that. I'm not so scared because Mars in Sagittarius isn't in a specifically like debilitated or position or like that. But sometimes, regardless, when Mars chimes into that sixth house where it is also its joy, but it can lead to accidents. And accidents then hinder us. And we have to, like maybe something falls on your foot and then you have crutches and all of a sudden you can't do things as easily anymore as you used to. And then when things come like that, we have to rely on the ninth house stuff, which are a lot about our beliefs and how they shape our recovery process and approach to these shortcomings that we sometimes face, or just annoying little circumstances that set us back, so to say. So, yeah, this is what I have for you, dear Cancers. Um, Actually, let me say one last thing, and I'm only going to say this for Cancers just because Jupiter is also in your first house. Okay, so it is. I feel like this is still going to be extra special for you. There is a focus on you here a lot. And I'm saying this because Jupiter it also rules Sagittarius. So it does also impact you directly. And Jupiter is going to station retrograde around November 11th. So there is going to be a more introspective mode for you. So I really urge you to find some daily routines. And, a lot of that is also here visible in the third house, in just that can help you kind of ground your racing thoughts if that should become an issue. There is really a lot of like peace that can be found in just waking up a tiny bit earlier and taking a walk, appreciating, being grateful, having a gratitude journal, whatever is up your alley. Okay, there's millions of suggestions I could probably make at this point, but the most important thing and how you will realize if it's suitable for you is if it leads you feeling better afterwards and you feel less stressed. So, anyhow, these are my closing thoughts for Cancer. I hope you're doing well, and I wish you a wonderful Mars and Sagittarius transit. See you soon. Leo suns and Leo risings. Hello, hello, and welcome to your Mars and Sagittarius horoscope. Mars is going to be traveling through your fifth house, and this is going to reignite your creative spirit and fire in that fifth house. Immediately, though, the first thing we have happening around November 4th is the Uranus opposition. This is happening across your fifth and 11th house. So this is, the electrified inspiration. Just because that's going to happen, in your fifth house. And you're probably going to be like really activated of like, oh my gosh, I want to do this and I want to do that and I want to do this and I want to do that. And I want to activate all these people and hang out with all these people. I feel like it's almost a bit of a FOMO type of transit. So do follow your excitement wisely. Okay, not everything that is immediately represented as a spark needs to be followed and needs to be rebranded or reignited into a burning fire. So yes, just simmer with the initial enthusiasm and see where it leads. A few days later, Uranus is gonna go back into the sign of Taurus. So there is other topics that are going to be more present. And then around November 13th, we're going to have Mars Mercury conjunction in the sign of Sagittarius. This is going to sharpen your creative voice and endeavors, and you're probably want to express yourself in ways that are honest and not tied to perfection. I will say that Mercury is in retrograde motion during that time, so it is a bit more introspective. And in this way, I highly urge you to really sit down and take the time, like really appreciate what ideas come through you when you sit down in stillness. Because the mind can be very hyperactive and loud, and we can have millions of ideas and dreams, which is very Uranus in the 11th house. It's almost an overwhelming amount of visions and ideas when Uranus gets activated in the 11th house. But still, there is an urge for like reflection and maybe even go back, honestly. Okay, this is Mercury in its retrograde motions. Go back to what you were doing when you were a child. Okay, the fifth house also has to do with children, oftentimes coincides with our inner child, but can also coincide with our own children if we have them. But I know not everyone that is watching is gonna have physical children in their lives, but see them as inspiration. See what they can tell you. When we're adults, oftentimes we overthink things so much. Yet as kids, we have these simple solutions that just come up our way, and it's just like it just happens naturally. And so there's a lot that can be learned. And maybe look back, go back through pictures or what you were excited as a kid. Like, what were you doing that excited you as a kid? That is so important for you, Leos, to connect to that energy because it is such inner creative fuel. And I do think our childhoods often revealed so much about our interests and our trajectories before we even know. But sometimes we just lose the way and we need to reconnect back to that. And yeah, around November 24th, we're gonna have Mars at the bending of the nodes, which are these two guys right here, zapping across your 12th and 8th house axis. So it's really gonna be about your joy in Mars in the fifth house. This is going to become your medicine in how it creates and shapes your destiny, and how you're going to see that you being your true and honest and full authentic self, which is really your story, anyways, dear Leos. But it's easier said than done sometimes, And sometimes I feel like there is often a lot of pressure as well. Everyone's like, oh, you just be yourself. Well, what is that? What is that? There's a lot of reflection and introspection involved until we can find our true selves. And it's often something that is also constantly shape-shifting and evolving. And we are in relationship to ourselves in you throughout different seasons of our lives. And so, but you, being your most you that you can be, inadvertently will lead you to these topics of the second and eighth house, which are your own resources and other people's resources. You're going to be surprised how much things and how much luck comes into your life by you simply radiating your joy. How many things people offer to you by you simply radiating your joy. And then by the end of this transit, throughout December 9th till 14th, we're going to have Mars squaring Saturn and Neptune. This is going to blur play and pressure and protect your spark from obligation. Again, it's kind of just going to deepen what I have been saying before. Focus on the most you that you can be, and things will feel a lot easier. A lot easier. And there's gonna probably be some final karmic ties that are resolved here. Okay, the eighth house has a lot to do with our karmic debts, especially what other people have to us, what they owe us emotionally, physically, financially, in whatever ways. And Saturn and Neptune are in Pisces one last time. So there is something that is probably owed to you and something that needs to get cleared. The scales need to get cleared one last time. But focus on, the best revenge is being the baddest bee that you can be. So, anyhow, so this is what I have for you, Leo suns and risings. I hope you have a lovely time and I wish you an amazing Mars and Sagittarius transit. Okay, Virgo suns and Virgo risings, welcome to your Mars in Sagittarius horoscopes. Mars in Sagittarius is going to be traversing through your fourth house of home and family and inner roots and ancestry, and also kind of your base. The fourth house, I really see it as the base of our chart. And this month is going to be very much activating your angular houses, okay, which are the first, the fourth, the seventh, and the 10th house. So this is going to be a pretty significant time for you, dear Virgos. And the first transit that we are getting immediately as the ingress happens is Mars opposing Uranus in the sign of Gemini. This may bring surprises in family or housing, and I just urge you to adapt and don't over control. Uh, there could be, the fourth house being the house of home and family, it could be in ties with there's like maybe a job announcement in your family, maybe somebody takes on a different career role, and that in turn can shake up the foundations as well because it's going to impact you as well. Maybe even for a good way, maybe somebody accepts a new job position and you're like, okay, we're going to earn a lot more money, so it's time to move to a different place, which can be positive, right? But there is going to be a disruption in these parts of your charts. And then around November 13, we're going to have Mars Mercury conjunction, which is important for you because you are ruled by the sign, by the planet of Mercury. And Mercury during that time is going to be in Sagittarius in its retrograde motion. So it is debilitated in that way. And if there are any things coming up in your home private life as well, um, there might be some exposing going on and some unspoken words finally resurfacing and being spoken out loud, which can be very healing, but can also sometimes be a lot, when you're not expecting that. So do find your safe places in your home life, if needed. Make sure to get cozy during that time, and because Mars in the fourth house in general, there can also just be an urge to like redecorate your house, like Mercury, your own ruler, being activated. It can also just be an urge to be like, I'm going to change my space. And my Mercury retrograde is about me changing some paintings that I have on my voice, or me rearranging my room that I'm living in and just making things a bit differently. Because even just that can lend us to have a different sort of perspective. Yes. But it can also do with family members. Maybe they decide to redecorate the home and, yeah, move furniture around, all of that. Yes, then around November 24th, we're going to have Mars at the bending of the nodes, which are these two guys right here. There are going to be ancestral and emotional pattern shifts. This is a good day to shift some family karma. I'm telling you guys, with decisive actions, with maybe being like, I'm not putting up with this BS anymore. I'm removing myself from that or from these family members. Could also be opposite, and you gain deeper relationship through that, through speaking words, through letting things resurface. And yeah, it can go both ways, and again, this is the second part of 3 Mercury Mars conjunctions. We're going to have the last one in the sign of Capricorn, so this is just the middle part. Okay, the story is not yet finished. And then coming through December 9th till 14th, we're going to have Mars squaring Saturn and Neptune here in your seventh house. So this is going to be a test of emotional boundaries. And what does safety really mean now? These are, these two guys have been traveling through your seventh house for a long while, especially Neptune. This is both of them being in Pisces one last time. And this has already been putting up so many tests when it comes to partnership and close one-to-one relationships. So, one last time, there is a question of, is this really working long term or is it not? What is safety meaning right now? And how do I want to feel at home with these people that are close to me? Is it feasible? Is it possible? So, this is what I have for you, dear Virgos. Let me know how you're doing. And I'm wishing you a lovely Mars and Sagittarius transit. Libra Sun and Libra Risings, welcome to your Mars and Sagittarius horoscopes. And Mars and Sagittarius is going to be traveling through your third house. So your mind is going to be on fire. You're going to want to be intellectually stimulated. And this is also already going to be explored through the very first transit that happens at the mere beginning, which is going to be Mars opposing Uranus in the sign of Gemini across your third and ninth house axis. So this is really going to jolt your perspectives in radical new ways of how you are thinking in the world, of how you are shaping your worldviews. And sometimes this energy here in the third house can also come in the form of siblings. So maybe your siblings, if you have them, they might be the ones provoking you to think differently as well. They might be the embodiment of Mars right here. Then around November 13th, we're going to have Mars and Mercury conjunction here in the sign. In your third house, not in the sign, but in the sign of Sagittarius, which is going to urge you to speak boldly. But, yet Mercury is retrograde during that time. So it's going to ask you to reflect first, okay? Mercury is in a debilitated position in the sign of Sagittarius. And then additionally, it is retrograde. So we got to think first before we speak. And this might also be a very important time to have conversations with your siblings and ask them important questions, or maybe they're going to ask you important questions, or there's going to be some interesting conversations that need to be had. Yes, then come November 24th, we're going to have Mars at the bending of the nodes, which is going to be Wait, sorry, I just saw that mistakenly here. I forgot to put this note here in the 12th house. Apologies for that. So that south node here in Virgo is in your 12th house. So it's across your 12th and 6th house axis. Gosh, I feel bad. I think the rest of the slides should be good though. Yeah, yeah. Gosh, I only made the mistake here. Sorry, dear Libras. Just imagine this little guy hanging around here. But yes, when Mars is at the bending of the nodes, there's gonna be your choices and your words are gonna reflect and direct your karma. There's when the 12th and 6th house gets activated, there's a lot of subconscious beliefs coming to the surface. There's a lot of dreams that are coming up, like because there's a lot of things we are processing through our dreams. Sixth house has a lot to do with things that are frustrating in life, and they're also going to get activated throughout December 9th till 14th when Saturn is squaring Saturn and Neptune there, which is going to blend your discipline and imagination. So I think Mars being your third house just generally is going to ask you to write and to reflect and don't just react. It's going to be a phenomenal time to have a journal, to read books that are intellectually stimulating, and also to gather around with your siblings or sibling-like figures and learn from them. And also let yourself get inspired by your nearby environment because the third house also has to do with our nearby environment. Sometimes when Mercury goes retrograde in our third house, there can be, we can find different commutes because like the third house has to do with like small daily commutes. And sometimes when Mercury is retrograde there, it can invoke us being like, instead of taking the bus that I'm always taking, let me take the tram instead, or let me take the metro instead. Or if you're driving with the car to your work, sixth house themes, every day, what if instead of taking this route, I take another route? And then all of a sudden, you realize there's a whole different world there that is very stimulating, and you meet people and that can be very beneficial. That's the type of stuff that happens when Mars is at the bending of the nose between the 12th and the 6th house. So this is what I have for you, dear Libras. Let me know how you're doing, and I'm wishing you a wonderful Mars and Sagittarius transit. Scorpio suns and Scorpio risings, welcome to your Mars and Sagittarius horoscopes. Now, you're coming off from Mars going through your first house. Mars is now entering Sagittarius in your second house. That has a lot to do with confidence and values and how your own resources are flowing. And obviously, this is important because Mars is your ruler, same as with Aries. So whatever Mars is doing is going to be important for you. The immediate thing that happens right upon ingress is that Mars is opposing Uranus in the sign of Gemini. This happens around November 4th, and this shakes stability. And, reminder that whatever is being shaken net was never solid. If you thought, I have it figured out and I have my own research and I have a beautiful plan, Uranus in the eighth house is like, yeah, what if the government says something though? Or all of a sudden, you're like, I have it figured out with my finances, and then you get the tax paper and it's like, well, no. Uranus in the eighth house has been activating a lot of surrender in that eighth house of yours, this dear Scorpio, where you're really forced to let go of the control that you think you have of other people and really realizing how little you have of that. Then, come November 13th, we have Mars Mercury conjunction in the sign of Sagittarius in your second house. This is going to reframe your values through your mindset and really focus on how you believe, like what you believe about yourself really shapes the way you show up and what you think you deserve. Very important. I think this Mercury retrograde is going to be powerful in that way for you. And then around November 24th, we have Mars at the bending of the nodes between your 11th and 5th house. And there are choices about money and energy exchange that are needing to be shifted. The groups you have around yourself, 11th house, and the joy that this brings, that could potentially bring into your life, is going to impact your ability to create income and to generate value. So choose wisely who you have around you. And then December 19th till 14th, we are going to have Mars squaring Saturn and Neptune. Now I said it right, which is going to teach you that worth isn't defined by outcome, but by devotion. And by choosing, radically choosing what brings pleasure into your life. I know Saturn has been very tricky over the past 2.5 years of really finding pleasure. I think for a lot of Scorpios, we're struggling to find the joys and the creativity in their lives. And yet, I think Saturn also invoked in a lot of ways to surpass our boundaries and see what can be done in our confined boundaries, because there's always solutions. And oftentimes, when we accept the limits we set ourselves, this is how we live our life. And so yeah, but this is a lot of the fifth house. Saturn and Neptune are here one last time. So this is really about some past stuff and embracing that for one last time and just seeing where the blocks are around creativity. It is also time to access that inner child healing once again, because there's a lot of wisdom from your inner child. That's what I have for you, dear Scorpios. Let me know how you're doing, and I wish you a lovely Mars and Sagittarius transit. So, dear Sagittarius, suns and risings, welcome to your Mars and Sagittarius horoscopes. As you already know, you are the star of this one because Mars is going to be traveling through your first house. I made it extra big. I made Mars extra big for you here in your first house, and Mercury as well. When your first house is activated, this is a spark of your own self. And oftentimes when Mars is active in the first house, there is really a reinvigoration of like, how do I want to be in this world? And you're also entering your first house season as well, when the sun is going to be moving into the sign of Sagittarius as well here. Which is not going to happen immediately at the beginning, but it's going to happen eventually. And you're slowly this transit, like Mercury and Mars moving into the Sagittarius before the sun does, is really already slowly shifting you out of that 12th house season that you had with all the transits in Scorpio that was more quiet. This is a lot more louder. And the first transit that we are getting around November 4th is Uranus and Mars opposition across your first and seventh house axis. This tests how freely you embody truth, you embody your truth, and it's going to liberate you from your like how you are okay, let me put it this way. The seventh house is a lot about other people and the mirrors. And this is really kind of other people can mirror you and can be your mirrors and can sometimes show you things that are not so fun. And I think ever since Uranus moved into your seventh house, there have probably been a lot of unexpected people that came into your life and that opened doors to ways and paths of life that you didn't even think were possible. But you usually are a sign, you're a mutable sign, so you are quite adaptable. And so I do think that this transit is gonna be like, you're gonna be okay with it, Like, I feel like there's other signs that I would have been like, I'm not quite sure, but I feel like you can really embrace whatever Uranus is trying to bring into that seventh house and what other people can bring into your life. Then on November 13th, we're gonna have Mars and Mercury conjunction here in your first house. This is gonna amplify your voice, but you do have to watch out for impulsive expression because Mercury is gonna be retrograde at that time, and sometimes Mercury in Sagittarius can be quite blunt, and you just gonna like before speaking, sit down first, even if something uh, heavily triggers you or you have an urge to speak out. Don't always do that because it could be mistaken for the wrong intention or not the way, or you could come across in a way that you wouldn't like to, or maybe this is at a meeting where you're meeting people for the first time and they just got like the wrong first impression. And if you can, I would avoid that. So anyhow, and then around November 24th, we're going to have Mars at the bending of the nodes. Of course, your 10th and 4th house axis, and this is decisions shaping your identity and who you are becoming when you act on faith. Okay, this is really decisive action because when you focus on yourself, you're going to be able to reach the goals that are 10th house topics. Okay, and you're going to have a solid base, which, the fourth house talks about family, can also be chosen family. You want to have a stable base so you can put yourself into achieving and going after those dreams. Through December 9th and 14th, we're going to have Mars squaring Saturn and Neptune also here in your fourth house. This is going to ground the inner fire and drive because it's going to focus on self-mastery through mindful movement. And yeah, it might also be the time where you see Saturn here in the fourth house. I think for a lot of Sagittariuses has been really focusing on I feel like a lot of Sagittarius likes to travel around, and I think Saturn in the fourth house has really been making them see where could I potentially have my home base for a longer time. Or a lot of Sagittarius I know actually have been staying put in the same place as long as Saturn was in the sign of Pisces, and it still kind of is right now. So it is interesting, and then after that, I think you're going to be able to move a bit more freely again. But it has a lot to do also with facing ancestry and facing where you're coming from. I think a lot of you have also been visiting ancient homelands or just reconnecting with your ancestry and your family lineage. Because this is what shapes you ultimately, where you come from, fourth house, is what shapes you and where you go. So, dear Sagittarius, is this what I have for you? I wish you a lovely, transit in your first house. Enjoy. I see you soon. Bye. Dear Capricorn suns and Capricorn risings, welcome to your Mars in Sagittarius horoscope. This is going to be activating your 12th house, which, is definitely going to invoke the often invisible subconscious patterns and battles that you're fighting on an internal level that are so invisible to the outside world, but so real for you. And the first transit that you are getting is immediately Mars opposing Uranus across your 12th and 6th house axis. This year's restlessness in how you're approaching life. There might be some health issues that are coming up at that time, and you might be processing a lot through your dreams, through analysis. There might also be some creative downloads in how you approach these rather harsher 12th and 6th house topics. You might get new ideas how you show up at your job, at your work, and how you do your routines, and how they can help you to beneficially help you out to become a better version of yourself and not be like not lead to detriment, not to overwork yourself. There is a possibility of that. Then around November 13th, we're going to have Mars Mercury conjunction, which is going to sharpen your spiritual awareness, and inner dialogue is going to be here. Okay, Sagittarius season in general is your 12th house season, so it is a more quiet season for you, which I do think is quite interesting because Sagittarius tends to be a rather extroverted sign. Although certainly it can also be the sage on the hill type of thing. I think Sagittarius can kind of go in both ways. And both of these in your 12th house, especially Mercury in its retrograde motion in Sagittarius in your 12th house, is going to lead to a lot of introspection and reflection. And keep a dream journal around that time. Note down the things that you want to talk about in therapy. This is going to be a very interesting time for you in yeah, to see like how you approach the world and how your perhaps self-sabotaging or self-undoing patterns are really impacting you in ways that you don't even really know. And next month when Mars moves into the sign of Capricorn, which is going to be in December, it's going to activate your first house. And this is going to be a full rebirth moment because Mars is exalted in your sign in Capricorn. So there's some internal work that needs to be done, but when you do it, I promise you it's going to feel even sweeter when Mars rolls around here in your first house. Then, coming November 24th, we're going to have Mars at the bending of the nodes, which are these two guys right here, which is really going to focus on surrendering, becoming sacred action. The ninth and third house have a lot to do with our beliefs, with our thinking. And this is really active for you, okay? I feel like so much of how you think and how you see the world, you're gonna see how much it shapes, your sixth house here and your health and routines and all of that. And then come December 9th till 14th, we're gonna have Mars squaring Saturn and Neptune. Also here in your third house. And Saturn is your ruler, right? So this is important. And it's going to ask you, where does effort and trust begin? Okay. Which things, third house, not just to do with siblings, but it has to do with words. It has to do with how we're speaking, also to ourselves on an internal level. It has to do with our daily rituals that we have. Sixth house is more routines, daily routines. Third house is more daily rituals. And the things we do that really uplift and help us to have a sustainable life that feels joyful, that we do from its pure joy. And so I do think there is a final, because Saturn is there for one last time and Neptune as well. They're moving into Aries next year for good, and they're not going to go back into Pisces for a long, long time. Neptune, never again in our lifetimes. And Saturn for like another, 30 years. So this is the final test here in your third house. So yes, this is what I have for you, dear Capricorns. Let me know how you're doing, and I wish you a lovely Mars and Sagittarius transit. See you guys soon. Aquarius suns and Aquarius risings, welcome to your Mars and Sagittarius horoscope. Mars is going to be activating your 11th house, which has to do with your dreams and goals and visions and the people that you need around you that are going to help you reach those dreams and goals. And definitely when Mars chimes in into the 11th house, it's going to ignite the vision that you have for the world. And that is just so you. I think you're going to have a pretty good time with Mars hanging around in your 11th house. The immediate first transit we are getting though is Mars opposing Uranus here across your 11th and 5th house, which alters your community or friendship dynamics, and it feels like truth is being put over convenience. You want to have people that align with your visions and your dreams, okay? Because this is ultimately going to lead you to having these pleasurable and joyful moments that are happening in your 5th house. And this transit is going to make this abundantly clear. Then around November 13th, we have Mars and Mercury conjunction in the sign of Sagittarius in your 11th house, which is really going to make you see like basically how your voice can lead to empowering collaboration moments. And Mercury is going to be retrograde in Sagittarius there. And this is only one of three of these transits that we're getting. We already had Mars Mercury conjunction in the sign of Scorpio. And we're gonna have the last one in Mars, Mercury in Capricorn, but now we're gonna have it in Sagittarius when Mercury is in retrograde motion. So I feel like put out your ideas, okay? Make a spreadsheet and just put out all the ideas that you're having, that you want to do with your group, that you want to do with your community. You don't have to yet act on them, but it's just good to have them. It's just good to have a folder on your desk or a paper somewhere where you can brainstorm all the things that want to come up, because there is more that needs to be revealed until you can like fully act upon that. Yes. Then around November 24th, we're going to have Mars at the bending of the nodes, which are these two guys right here across your 2nd and 8th house axis. So your goals are going to realign with your destiny, and you're going to be able to clearly see what resources do you need to put in and where do you need to let other people come into your life and help you out so that the dreams that are here can actually come to fruition. Then around December 9th till 14th, we're going to have Saturn squaring, I said it wrong, sorry, Mars squaring Saturn and Neptune. But Saturn squaring Mars also is true, you know, both of them are just squaring each other. And this is going to remind you that ideals need embodiment. I'm going to need to walk your talk. And you're going to have to be careful in which resources of your own you want to invest here into these visions and dreams that you want to realize. Okay. Um, yes, this is what I have for you, dear Aquariuses. Let me know how you are doing. And I wish you a lovely Mars and Sagittarius transit. Bye. And dear Pisces suns and risings, welcome to your Mars and Sagittarius horoscope. Mars is going to be activating your 10th house. And as you can probably see here, all of your angular houses are getting activated. The angular houses are the 1st, 4th, 7th, and 10th house, the angles. So a lot of very important topics are going to resurface that often hold a lot of stability in our lives. You know, the 1st house being about the self, the 4th house being like the base of our chart, the 7th house having to do with our close people and partnerships, and the 10th house having to do with like our work and career. So all of that is highlighted for you. And you know, when Mars is in the 10th house, it is definitely taking up the way of how you want to, like what you want to leave behind. The 10th house also talks a lot about legacy, and oftentimes what we work is our legacy. And so it's really going to inspire you to take purpose and take charge and take action in doing the things that at the end of the day lead you to be remembered in a good way and leave your legacy. The immediate thing we get, though, at the beginning on November 1st, right at the ingress, is Mars opposing Uranus in the sign of Gemini, which may bring career surprises or sudden visibility, you know, all of that. Uranus in the fourth house there's a lot of like unexpectedness with it being at our base. And you could be surprised, you could be surprised at what happens in your life and how all of a sudden you become more visible than you anticipated it to be. And what you kept private suddenly gets out in the open. And yeah, it's definitely shaking up your foundation and what you thought was perhaps like safe and real and grounded. And yeah, it could also lead to changes like in your home life, impacting your career and work life here. Maybe somebody at home gets a child, or you get a new pet, or just something needs to be changed in your home life. It doesn't have to be like your immediate home. It can also be your family. Okay, so something changes in the family dynamic and constellation, which then impacts your work life. Could also be in a positive way. Okay, it doesn't have to be in a negative way. It could be that somebody in your family gets a new job, like your uncle gets a new job, and there is another position open, and they want you to work there. And so you get a chance and an opportunity through them. That is also unexpected. So, yes. Then November 13th, we have Mars Mercury conjunction in the sign of Sagittarius here in your 10th house, which stirs strong opinions. And you got to be able to lead through example here. Okay. This is what is important. Because if there is unexpected visibility coming along your way, you don't want to ruin your first impression. And certainly when Mercury is retrograde and debilitated in the sign of Sagittarius, that is something that has the potential of happening. Like you're put in the public light, and then you say something that you think is lighthearted or that, but then media takes it the wrong way. You become a meme or anything like that. So do be careful, or you have a new job interview and there's a risk of being misunderstood. And I really don't want that to happen to you. So just be very clear, rehash before you have a public speech or anything like that, dear Pisces. Then around November 24th, we have Mars at the bending of the nodes, which are these two guys right here. There is a professional redirection that serves your soul path. Okay. These are karmic moments, and this is leading to your first and seventh house. It might as well be that at that time, some very important person comes into your life that helps you out when it comes to your career or when it comes to yourself. So, yeah. And at the end, there's a build up here around how you want to be remembered, the legacy that you want to leave. So, there will be a focus on that. And then by the end of the transit, Mars squares Saturn and Neptune. This is happening throughout December 9th till December 14th, which is gonna kind of soften the mission a bit more and make you take care more of yourself. Because success is measured in alignment, not applause. And you have to be able to applaud yourself first here, okay? You have to be able to stand up for yourself. Saturn in your first house has been really rearranging and reassessing and how you value yourself and how you take care of yourself. And I mean Neptune as well. And you probably realize it the most this time, dear Pisces, when Saturn and Neptune both moved outside of your first house and into your second house, just how much they have been doing over the past couple of years in your first house. I mean, this is a complete identity shift and change that has been going on for years. Neptune has been in Pisces for the past 14 years. That is a long, long, long time. And so there's one last final time that you're going back, that you're reassessing how you are showing up for yourself, how you want to present yourself, which also has to do with the 10th house, because this is how we present ourselves to the public. But sometimes, and this is why they are in square relationships, the way we truly are and the way we are in public does not fully align. And I don't think it ever does. Everybody of us kind of wears a mask in public, no matter how authentic we are trying to be. As soon as there is a camera involved, it is just different. It is different than when we are completely alone. As much as we try to be authentic as possible. So these are kind of the questions that are going to be important for you, dear Pisces. And I'm wishing you a lovely Mars in Sagittarius transit. Let me know how you're doing. I'm sending you much love. Great. And we're coming to the end of the presentation. This is how you can stay connected to me. If you've enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like on this channel so the algorithm knows that it is good, and it helps me out to grow this channel and to help you be able to connect to the cosmos and the transits in a deeper way. You can also find me on Instagram under Resonance Astrology or on Reddit under Haruka, but I'm not active on there so much, to be completely honest. My website is resonanceastrology.com. If you have any questions, you can always email me, okay, under resonance.astrology@gmail.com. And YouTube and Spotify, also Resonance Astrology. Pretty much everything is Resonance Astrology. And yeah, I release different tidbits. Sometimes if I did this video right here, I will conduce that into a post on Instagram. And so if you like that, if you want to have something you can also screenshot and save, then it's worth following me on Instagram as well, because you can just like save the transit in a written form where I condense the information of Mars in Sagittarius. You can have both. You can have the deep dive here and the short form on Instagram. So, anyhow, this is what I have for you guys. Let's see each other like that again on the big screen. I sincerely wish you a lovely Mars and Sagittarius transit. I'm personally pretty excited for this one. I think it's going to be pretty cool and awesome. Although there are, as always, there's some transits are pleasant, some are not so pleasant. I definitely think it's gonna, yeah, invoke a lot of different directions in all of us, depending on how it is landing in our charts and also what it is activating in our personal charts. But yeah, this is what I have for you guys for now. I wish you a lovely time, and we're gonna see each other soon. Goodbye.